Hello and welcome back to the Reverbium channel with me, Shaun. The day that no Formula 1 fan wanted to happen, Sebastian Vettel has announced his retirement from the sport at the end of the season. Since making his debut at the US Grand Prix in 2007 for BMW, Vettel went on to complete 290 Grand Prix, winning 53 of those races, getting on the podium 122 times, taking 57 poles, 38 fastest laps, and as of before this weekend's 2022 Hungarian Grand Prix, has earned himself 3,076 points, becoming world champion 4 times, his first of which making him the youngest ever world champion in F1 at the age of 23 years and 134 days. Those are some pretty big shoes to fill. I do not envy Lawrence Stroll having to do that over this summer before the season ends. Luckily for him, Vettel has done this early enough that there aren't really many drivers set in place for next year. Obviously, there's your obvious ones like Verstappen, Russell, Hamilton, who have their contracts at their teams, who weren't going to be moving anyway, but are already set in stone. But there are quite a few drivers out there who could be fighting for this spot. So let's take a look at who they could be. Starting off, we're going to look at Nico Hulkenberg. He's the current reserve driver for Aston Martin for this season and has already driven the car standing in for Vettel in the first 2 rounds of this season when Vettel had COVID. With 184 races, he has plenty of experience in the sport. And as I said, with being the reserve driver for Aston Martin, he already has experience in this car as well, so won't need too much time to adapt to the any new surroundings, how the team works. He'll already be familiar with that, so he could be a great shout to bring into the sport. The only problem is that his record isn't amazing in those races. He's raced a lot, but has never made it onto the podium, which has been a big thing surrounding Hulkenberg for this entire time. And when he's stood in for races during the COVID seasons, it was, could he get on the podium? So that could be a worry for Aston Martin, that yes, they're bringing the experience, which will fill that hole from Vettel, but are actually going to have a driver who's going to help push them forward and get results that they need? That's probably the big question mark over him, but he's a big player in this and probably one of the main ones at the moment just because he's already in the team, so it'd be an obvious fit to go in there. Next, we'll take a look at Felipe Drugovich, who's currently leading the F2 championship for this season. It's a complete opposite approach to Hulkenberg, and it's someone with no F1 experience at all, obviously being an F2 driver. But as I said, he's currently leading the F2 championship, showing a lot of pace, a lot of consistency. He's been in the F2 for a few years now, and has slowly made his way into this leading championship position. The other advantage of Drugovich is he currently has no affiliation to a Formula 1 team, so it'd be fairly easy to snap him up, pick him up into the team and put him in there, not having to worry about the logistics around any of the team of what they want to do with a driver in their academy. So he's a good option to pick, especially if he does win the F2 championship. I'm not sure where else he would go at the end of the season if he were to win. So you can't stay in F2. And would be a good long-term option for Aston Martin. So they have Lance Stroll at the moment, who has quite a bit of experience under his belt. So maybe they want to take that younger youth option of a long-term signing, and he could definitely be someone to do that. Along the same line of looking at F2 drivers is Taiyo Porsche. He's currently Drugovich's main rival in F2 for this season, currently in his 2nd season in the championship, and he's shown a lot of pace over the season and a half he's currently been in there, and currently is the youngest ever race winner in F2 with his win in Monaco last season. The only downside here is obviously that Porsche is part of the Alfa Romeo/Sauber driver program, so it may be a bit difficult to pick him up. We're not quite sure what Alfa Romeo want to do with Porsche at the moment, whether they're going to look to promote him. Zhou Guanyu is out of contract. He only signed 1 year, so there's every chance that Porsche could fill that spot instead, and then Aston Martin can't take him. It also might be unlikely that Aston Martin go for him, as they'll be seeking to give driving experience to, at the moment, what's probably one of their main rivals. They're probably on a similar par at the moment. Well, I'd say at the moment, we're not sure what's going to happen this weekend, but Aston Martin obviously a bit behind Alfa Romeo because of that Ferrari power from this year, but they're in the same mid-table area, so it would be giving experience to a future rival of them. Our final look at someone outside of F1 is Nick Devries, the current reigning Formula E champion. He's currently the test driver for Mercedes and has featured last weekend driving in practice 1 instead of Hamilton, showing some good pace in a Formula 1 car. So he has the talent to be able to be in F1. But again, how likely is it going to be that he's going to move across? I'm not sure. It's unlikely that he's going to be getting a seat at Mercedes anytime soon, with Hamilton and Russell being fairly fixed in place. Obviously, Hamilton is getting a bit older now, but he doesn't show any signs of wanting to retire or giving up, so it's very unlikely that he's going to get a seat at Mercedes. So trying to push for a seat here at Aston Martin might be his play, might be the way that he can get into Formula 1. And a relationship already exists between the two teams. Aston Martin have a Mercedes engine in their car, so it might just be a way that Mercedes can see that they can get an extra driver onto the F1 grid for next year, so there's every chance that they could do that. So moving on to the current F1 grid on who could move about, go elsewhere. My first is going to be the AlphaTauri drivers, Gasly and Tsunoda. Both of them are out of contract at the end of the season, so there's every chance that they could move. Gasly's had his fair share of ups and downs while being in the Red Bull driver system, being promoted up to Red Bull, then demoted back down. And with a move back up to Red Bull looking highly unlikely, Verstappen's locked in till 2028. Perez has a few years on his contract, and both drivers driving really well. It doesn't look like they're going to want to give up that spot anytime soon, so this might be what Gasly needs to move out of the Red Bull program, have a fresh start and a new team, and somewhere where he can look to progress forward in the future. Along with Tsunoda, it doesn't look like he's going to be going anywhere. He's still looking very promising talent that Red Bull want to hang on to, showing a lot of pace when he gets it right. Obviously, there's a few issues with his consistency. He has crashed out a few times, especially last season. Although both AlphaTauri drivers are struggling a bit this year, I think, with the car, he still looks very promising and probably someone Red Bull want to hang on to. Along with that, Albon recently has come out and said regarding his future that the Red Bull and AlphaTauri seats look pretty set for next year, and it doesn't look like a way of him getting back into that system at all. So it doesn't look like either of those two drivers will actually be moving anywhere next year, and they'll both be at AlphaTauri come the start of the next season. Speaking of Alex Albon, the British Thai driver only signed a 1-year contract with Williams at the start of this season. With Williams struggling to find pace again this year, Albon could look to move to a new team. He's a brilliant driver and has shown the pace that he has when he was at Red Bull before being dropped. So it might be that he wants to try and move to a team that have more chance of progressing forward. And I think even though Aston Martin haven't had a great start since the move from Racing Point, they could be on the way up. They're a bit inconsistent this season, but I think with a few upgrades they looking to be bringing in the next few weeks, we could see a jump in pace there, and that might be what Albon is after, is to just go to a team that look to be going forward and see if he can become more of a main driver there and push them forward. What also might help him is that Logan Sargent is looking very good in Formula 2. He's currently third in the championship, and he is a Williams Academy driver, so it might be more of a fact that Williams are looking to bring him up and promote one of their own drivers that keep Albon in the system. So it looks like it could be more up to Williams on whether Albon's able to make this move or not. Two-time world champion Fernando Alonso is also out of contract at the end of this season, which means a move for him could be a possibility. Although if you're Alonso, with the pace that Alpine are showing this year, you'd probably want to try and sign a contract extension. I think he'd want to. I think he wants to stay in the sport. I don't think he's looking to retire anytime soon, because he seems to be performing well, and it's just been a bit unlucky sometimes, where he probably should have more points at this point in the season than he actually has. The problem for him could be what Alpine are looking to do with their other youth drivers. So they have Zhou at the moment with Alfa Romeo, where they might look to try and promote him, as he's had an alright start to the season. I wouldn't say it's anything amazing, but definitely I think has gone on above and beyond what I thought he'd be going at this year. So he did well last year in F2, but he took quite a few years in F2 to get to a point of challenging for the championship, where I thought he might struggle here, but he's held his own, he's done quite well. So Alpine may look to promote him, with Alonso being out of contract. They also have last year's champion Oscar Piastri, who currently doesn't have a seat. They may be looking to try and get him into F1. I think they definitely want to. The problem is where they can. Obviously, they have a chance of replacing Alonso. Piastri also could have a chance of getting in Aston Martin. Alpine could use this as a way to get another one of their drivers into F1 and get them a bit of experience ready for when Alonso actually wants to retire. So Oscar Piastri along with Alonso could be an option. I don't think Alonso is that much of an option. I think he'd rather stay at Alpine. I can't see him wanting to drop down to Aston Martin because it would at the moment be a drop down. I think he'd rather either sign a new contract or he'd probably look to leave the sport again if Alpine choose to not renew his contract at the end of the season. The final person I want to look at is Mick Schumacher. He's become a bit of a prodigy to Sebastian Vettel since joining F1 2 years ago. He was F2 champion in 2020, so he has that racing pedigree of his father. So definitely looks one for the future that would be improving a lot more. He struggled in his first season last year at Haas, but you can put that a lot down to the car. They weren't improving the car at all. He was basically fighting against the car more than any other driver for the entire season, failing to pick up any points and crashing out a few times. But also what we have found with Schumacher is through every step of his career, it's taken him a season to get going. The first season is nothing to light the world up, but that second season he really pushes on. And I think that's what we're seeing this season. He's finally got his first points in F1, and I think he's only going to progress from there. And his contract is up at the end of the year as well. So there's every chance that Aston Martin could look as another option for the future. And with Vettel also reportedly urging Aston Martin to sign Schumacher as his replacement, there's every chance that this could be a possibility and something that Aston Martin would look at. And what more of an endorsement do you want from a 4-time F1 champion who is the youngest champion in the sport, and someone who your own father, who was a 7-time world champion, kind of took under his wing and mentored while they were both in the sport? It's a ringing endorsement and something that Aston Martin will probably be looking very much at. The only issue they may find is that Schumacher is still part of the Ferrari driver academy, so it may be that Ferrari want to keep him in a Ferrari-powered machine, and with no chance of a promotion to Ferrari likely anytime soon, with Leclerc and Sainz pretty set in their seats for a few years to come, it might be that Mick has to look elsewhere, or even Ferrari look elsewhere to try and get him a bit more experience, and it might be that Schumacher pushes more for this than Ferrari do, as he wants to move this team for something different and get out of Haas, although Haas have been looking a lot better this season, bringing some upgrades and looking to be a lot quicker. So it's kind of up there in the air of whether Schumacher takes the gamble to move or not, or is happy with how Haas are progressing. But whoever Aston Martin decide to sign for 2023, they've obviously got big shoes to fill, as we said earlier, trying to bring in that experience that Vettel has, or replace that, is impossible. There's none of these people have that experience and the quality that we're able to. So it is going to be more, I think it'd be a better option to go for a longer term option with one of the younger drivers, but we have to wait and see what's going to happen there, and we'll also wait to see what's next for Vettel outside of F1. I think a lot of people would agree that we'd like to see him in some sort of role as on maybe Sky, like Rosberg's doing at the moment, given his insights. He'll have a lot of insight, be able to have a good deep dive into these drivers currently on the grid and what they're doing and what's going through their head, that I think he would be great as a pundit. But we also know that he has a great passion outside of Formula One for equality and what else is going on in the world, and it's probably going to take more of a line down there. But I think we're all very excited to see what Vettel will go into next, and very sad to see him leave the sport.